I was in the military, and I have more than an inkling of this, though never confirmed, because I worked at the secret underground Antarctic military base. The reason I got the sparse information I did was because a lot of the personnel sent to the moon worked/trained at the Antarctica base first. I never went to the moon though. Were you ever stationed in Antarctica, Ope? I think a lot of the same technology was used to create the base in Antarctica, was being tested there first, etc., so very hard to hide from the rest of us, but also thinking that Antarctica was a test for whether people could be trusted with more secret information about the moon. Pic related, not real, by the way, something I photoshopped from memory. Still get the creeps thinking about some of the areas I had to be in that place. Making this kind of thing is like some kind of therapy that I still feel the need to do somehow. Now and then, I intentionally change or remove key details so I can pass it off as fantasy if I ever get challenged on it. But some of the basic details and all of the emotions that they are supposed to convey are very real. That job paid really well, but I still have the uneasy feeling that the stuff I was doing there or otherwise involved with was good for humanity, or not downright evil. The first picture is about when I was first going into the base with some other noobs. I have expertise in geology, one of the reasons I was there in the first place. Nothing I was seeing made any geological sense, and I mean none. Zip, zero, fucking nada, and increasingly so. Tunnels and caverns were obviously man-made, and, as I found out later, there was pretty standard military and construction equipment on the base that was used day to day and working outside the base. But there was no fucking way on God's green earth that anything like that shit was used to create this place, or even modify an existing natural cavern, so I was just getting really creeped the fuck out the further that we went. We hadn't interacted much, but only one noob with us has any geological expertise as far as I know, and him and I were increasingly sneaking surreptitious silent glances at each other, like, dude, are you seeing this shit? You just noticed that, right? We both know that what we are looking at isn't even close to fucking possible, don't we? I still get the heebie-jeebies just thinking about that first time, and occasional nightmares about experiences that I had there. Nothing bad per se happened, but that fucking place, man. Something just not right about it, and in so many ways. Feels like there is a background evil to it. That is the only way I can really describe it to you. But nothing we did was overtly bad. Like, you can shake it off as paranoia or understandable fears about where you are, but it never went away from me. It's how I imagine feeling if I were tricked into doing the bidding of Satan himself but couldn't prove it, and no individual act was anything I could morally object to. Like, there is an Asimov story where a guy uses robots to commit murder, even though they are programmed not to harm humans. He basically gets one robot to put poison in a drink and then leave it in a certain place, then tells another robot to collect the drink and unknowingly serve it to the target. The main cavern was a comfortable temperature, with no visible signs of anything keeping it that way. That and the long-term activity inside should have had some effect on the ice walls, but simply did not. For reasons I can't go into too much, I came to believe the ice was somehow impregnated with metal, or was some kind of composite that looked and seemed to otherwise behave exactly like ice, but just wasn't ice. Occasionally, I would notice brief metallic flashes within it, like something caught the light, but attempts to see it again by trying to view it at the same angle again was inexplicably fruitless. Where I did my day-to-day work, I was pretty close to the main entrance, so I would see a lot of people, supplies, and materials coming and going. I had good reason to believe there were no other entrances to the base that could accommodate the movement of that kind of thing to keep the base fully supplied, and people I had never seen before would just seem to show up out of nowhere, sometimes dressed completely inappropriately considering the whole outside environment, like odd or out-of-place camouflage patterns that would be useless on ice. Just the glaring incongruity between incoming supplies was enough for me to make subtle inquiries into other possible entrances, and where all this shit and people were even coming from. Just one of the things that didn't make any sense, and one of the most obvious, but there is plenty of more shit, major and minor. I tried to ignore a lot of it while I was there, but in the cold light of day, some of that shit was just banana cakes. Is it true that there is an area that kills anyone who goes there? Although it sounds like gossiping was not allowed among the ranks. It wasn't, but monkeys find a way to convey information subtly anyway. I don't know about any area that killed you, but pretty sure if I went into certain restricted areas, I would have been killed. Like, I could never find out what the unknown light actually was in previous pic related, despite being able to see it sometimes from a distance. Not sure if Antarctica itself is evil in some way. It is deceptively beautiful if that is the case. Being able to live and work there in an otherwise relatively normal way was kinda cool, no pun intended. Great to be able to go outside and motherfucking full on Antarctica, and then just come back onto the base, and it be like you just walked back to your house. I'd imagine living and working on the moon, at low gravity, would be the absolute shit under those conditions. Not sure if they'd even have low gravity all the time, which would cause problems, or have some artificial gravity. But if they're going outside, like OP says, then that would be cool enough. Relatively certain people who were showing up and disappearing were going to the moon and back, but not sure exactly how. But if they had to return to Earth gravity now and then to avoid problems, that would be one way to explain it. It seemed relatively regular, but not like it was always on a strict schedule either. But maybe I didn't see everyone all the time, so could never be sure. Like I said, I suspected this place was some kind of test for weird shitness tolerance and one's ability to go along with it and shut the fuck up about it afterwards, before possibly going to the moon or whatever. I don't think I put on a convincing poker face, and weird shitness tolerance turned out to be low, so probably why I'm no longer working there. The fact I have nightmares make therapeutic art, and I'm even talking about it as much as I am, means they were right about me, I guess. There was a restricted tunnel where I could see light at the other end, just like previous pic related. It wasn't always present, but I could kinda sorta make out some kind of shapes because of it, while at the same time, the glare obscured the source. It was just very weird, like it was a massive and extremely powerful light source, but too powerful to be explained by being there just to light the area it was in, or the tunnel. Like, you wouldn't have a 5,000 watt floodlight in your living room. There was something odd about the light it gave off too. Kind of yellow/orange, but not like any light source I've ever seen, natural or man-made. Also, I could somehow feel when it was on. When I was close to the tunnel entrance but not seeing it, or anywhere I could see light coming out of the tunnel. Like, I would know before I got there if it was on or off. The whole thing was just weird as fuck. Also, some of the extraneous tunnels and caverns that I saw don't even seem to have any discernible purpose. Yet. They are all kinds of weird shapes, sizes, and even different textures sometimes, but the striking thing is just how monumentally vast they are, in every sense of the word. Getting there or even crossing one on foot can take several hours. Some contain buildings, vehicles, or equipment. Many so sparsely it's like the equivalent of building an aircraft hangar to store a single bicycle and an outhouse. Some are completely empty as far as I could tell. Walking into one feels like a half-constructed, textureless Tomb Raider level crossed with the back rooms. And yeah, that kind of vidya shit triggers my figurative PTSD something awful now. Often, the ceilings are hundreds of feet, even, I'd swear, thousands of feet high, despite that not seeming to make any sense at all. I don't know how it's even possible for a ceiling to span that large an area and not show any signs of fracture or collapse. The weight of the ice per square foot at that depth is just off the charts nuts. I also always wanted to do some kind of spectral analysis of the light, but wouldn't have been able to get the equipment anywhere near it without arousing suspicion at best, and getting myself killed at worst. But really wanted to, because light was so goddamn weird. Like an RGB combination that can't exist. When I said there was weird major shit and minor going on, I was not kidding. This just one example of shit not adding up. That would be enough all on its own. That's the other thing. As powerfully bright as this thing obviously was, it just didn't light up the cavern it was in or the walls of the tunnel like you would expect. They were lit slightly, like previous pic related, but they should have been lit up, like the fucking sun itself was at the other end of the tunnel. Nothing made sense. I wasn't even sure if that effect was a property of the tunnel walls itself, or the light source, but I would lay money on the latter. I could not fuck with the walls of that tunnel, and nobody would go near the walls or talk about them anywhere else, but I did get a few opportunities elsewhere to chip off samples off the walls. It would melt to what as far as I could tell was normal water and behave in every way like normal ice, but the walls themselves were not behaving like ice at all. Also wondered if reflected flashes I kept seeing were some kind of random quantum effect, and why I could not reacquire them afterwards at the same angle, like a reflecting facet of a crystal. Seems like in order for that whole place to even exist at all, it was impossible not to expose anyone with any knowledge of science, geology, physics, chemistry, engineering, / common sense to some obvious logical issues. Like, they just couldn't effectively hide the bizarro world nature of the base itself, let alone any secret projects going on there. Of all the stuff I saw that was spooky, the one that really spooked me the most was pick related for some reason. I never got to see much of this cavern, just a brief glance basically, and only as much of it as pick related, but dude, what the fuck am I even looking at? Had to Photoshop the pic together, obviously, and trying to get it as accurate to what I saw as possible. Not perfect, but you get the idea. Literal fucking pyramid that looked like it was a relatively accurate recreation of something you'd see in Egypt, but made of ice. Was hard to really gauge the scale of it. Like it was a life-size copy of an existing one, or half-scale or some shit. I don't really know. Even top missing, invisible variations in bricks like real pyramids, missing bricks at bottom, etc. But inside the cavern with textured angle roof, near wall, not even centered in the cavern, which struck me as weird. Two guys at the foot of it in the distance, working on it or doing something, it's hard to tell. Massive crates nearby. Yellowish studio lights of different sizes, strung up almost at random like pick related, some on, some off. The obvious assumption is that they found the pyramid under the ice, right? Maybe the stone just had a coating of ice. But that is the weird part. Shit that I overheard at that time, gleaned and confirmed later on, made it pretty clear that it was built by us after the chamber was already created and was solid ice. I have racked my brain to the point of madness trying to figure out why in the fuck would anyone build a replica pyramid out of ice, underground, in the middle of Antarctica. If it was like made of regular bricks, came to a point, etc., I might not find it so confusing, and just assume pyramid power or technology was real, or ley lines or something, but this makes zero fucking sense. I originally wondered if the random positioning of the lights was supposed to represent stars or something, but I could not get anything to even come close to matching up with even the most generous interpretation of what I remember. Could be. If the walls were created by the action of some field on normal water to form super strong ice somehow, that would explain a lot. Like how when I removed a sample, it acts like normal ice / water, but then one wonders how it could hold up the roof, and me being able to chip away part of the wall. It wasn't unusually difficult to do or anything like that. I had hypothesized that the outer layer was normal ice, formed over the fake ice or some other structure, but I remembered the places where I chipped ice away, and when I came back the walls were healed or maybe repaired by somebody, and I was worried about that, but nobody ever said anything about it to me. I tend to believe that they were self-healing somehow. Maybe a field was attracting water from the atmosphere or something. Some of the tunnels had patterns that did look similar to magnetic field lines, but not all either. I will have to think about that. One hypothesis I initially had about the flashes is that it was random, because it was like when the retinas of astronauts get hit by cosmic rays and they see a flash, so I was thinking there was some kind of radiation involved, but I quickly dismissed that, because the flashes were very much like seeing large facets of a crystal. Large, but localized area with a more or less definite shape. Also, try as I might, I could not detect any unusual radiation with any equipment or test that I could devise. The place should have been awash in it if my hypothesis were correct. Could have been using a teleporter, coming to and from work every morning on an anti-gravity flying saucer, or using a goddamn IRL Stargate for all I know. What I can tell you is they sure as fuck were not coming through the front door. I believe there was some field or emission having an effect on the eye / brain itself. That affected that was penetrating through the walls, which is why I could feel it before I could see it, which would also explain the impossible color phenomenon. I did some quick eye and dirty color perception tests, and field / radiation tests around that location, but could not confirm the hypothesis. I could not stand there looking at color charts, doing eye tests, and walking around with a Geiger counter or anything in such a highly restricted area, so I had to be very careful and pretend I was doing normal things and just passing through. Couldn't look like I was snooping, especially since, although nobody talked about it, the weird nature of that light was one of those things that I figured everyone could not help but notice and was also curious about. That is one of the main reasons I had such a severe case of blue balls over that light, and not being able to do a full spectral analysis, which would have told me quite a bit about what I should have expected to say. The tests I did were also mostly further away, where it was easier not to come under too much scrutiny, but where the field might have been fairly weak, so might not have had the full effect I got when I was looking at the light, only my ability to sense the field, so maybe that's why they seemed to turn up nothing. Sorry. It was probably a bit misleading / ambiguous for me to say that I could feel when it was on or off. In my original post about it, I just said I just knew. So there was no sensation like Spider-Man sense tingling or hair standing up on the back of my neck. I would just know. Not as weird as it sounds when you think about it. Like, how do you know which way is up right now? You just do, right? You don't have to consciously sense gravity. Your inner ear has hairs sensing your orientation, but you don't feel anything or get any kind of tingling / sensation when you tilt your head. Not sure that's the best example, since we get visual cues, so don't really think about it in that way. But people who get inner ear infections and lose that sense certainly know about it because it turns them into clumsy, bumbling fools, revealing just how much they rely on that extra sense, and the fact it is even there. Not to mention motion sickness, drunkenness, etc. But I think the pigeon example is much better. It's not like they see a heads-up display with a compass or get a tingle when they fly the wrong direction, or at least I doubt it. Their brain just interprets their magnetic sense into them, automatically knowing their orientation in relation to the Earth as a whole. That is pretty much the way senses work. Your brain sees the world through them the way it needs to be. Like, you have two eyes, possibly of varying quality, but the two images are stitched seamlessly together into one. You also don't see your own nose, unless you look for it, even though strictly speaking, you do / should. You don't consciously see the interruptions in service when you blink. Your brain seamlessly fills your optic nerve blind spot and a lot of the shit in your peripheral vision that you think you are seeing right now and know is there. Your brain is mostly just filling in the blanks because it already knows what that shit looks like. Peripheral vision has extremely poor quality. One of the most impressive caverns I got to be in only once. It was the largest one that I saw. It was one of the totally empty ones, in a relatively regular symmetrical dome shape. I'd swear this thing was miles wide, and the highest point of the ceiling was 1,000 feet at least. Though perspective and reference point / size were an issue in that place, not least because the floor was perfectly flat and like a fucking Uber mirror made of ice. And when I say Uber, I mean it. A normal mirror reflects only about 80% of light, and you can sort of tell under the right conditions. High-grade optical mirrors get to like 99.9%, but are super smooth, polished, and obviously not something you want to be touching with your hands, etc. But we are just casually walking on this shit with no special precautions, and somehow leaving no scratches, smudges, or marks whatsoever. I saw 13 men in perfectly normal boots walk a considerable distance over the shit and back, drag and drop heavy equipment on it like it was nothing, but I could not see a single blemish of any kind. When we first went in, saw it, and they just started walking on it, as I comprehended what I was looking at, I was triggered, because it's like watching someone just bumblefuck walk around on the mirror of the JWST telescope. I almost said something just out of instinct, but quickly suppressed my gut reaction and just followed along, gritting my teeth thinking about the damage that we were doing, but there was none. Apart from that, I did not find the high reflection so perturbing in a scientific way, because there are such things as 100% internal reflection, etc., but the light reflection itself, I knew it was no ordinary mirror, or even some kind of somehow bulletproof, high-grade optical mirror either. And though I could not logically be sure it was made of ice, the same ice that the rest of the place was made out of in different forms, I am certain that it was. Also, the surface had normal traction, not slippery at all. One time, I was assigned to a group with the task of installing sensors in one of the ice caverns. For those of you not familiar, the military has long had systems where you put seismic sensors into the ground that detect any footfalls or vehicles in the area, alerting you when tripped, and even early devices could distinguish between single people, groups, wheeled vehicles, and track-driven vehicles. Just about any soldier could use this kind of sentry gear, so I'm not sure why they assigned me, except that they figured seismic gear should be deployed by a geologist or something. So, we go into this cavern that did not have the highest ceiling, but covered quite a large area. There were ice columns from floor to ceiling, irregularly distributed. The most distinctive thing about it was how bright diffuse white everything was, despite apparently being made of the same ice as all of the others, almost like everything was giving off its own fluorescent light, which I guess it was, since there was no visible light sources in there. The effect was that while you could see the columns, they would tend to blend into the background quite a bit, since it was all white on white. So, anyway, even before I deployed the sensors, I had the feeling that there was something in there with us. A lot of some things moving around that I could just not see blending into the white. I wasn't supposed to be looking at any of the data from the sensors, but naturally, you have to open a screen and check the thing is working before you leave. And yeah, there were a lot of things triggering the sensors, basically all over the entire area, and all around us, showing up as mostly personnel. The place was alive and on, the walls moving like blood in veins, living ice. That day I was in a weird headspace, and frankly, I just didn't want to know. I'd kinda exceeded my weird shitness quotient earlier that week, did not want to be assigned to this job in the first place, did not want to risk being suspected of any snooping or tiptoe around, and just wanted to get the fuck out of there ASAP. I just really was not in the fucking mood. I closed the screen, left it recording data as ordered, announced I was done, and we did just that. Now I regret not taking a closer look at that when I had the opportunity. Several obvious explanations, besides just installing this shit in an apparently empty cavern, but was not assigned there ever again to collect data or retrieve equipment or anything, but also raises questions like, if they could get ice to fluoresce like that, why have conventional lighting in other caverns and tunnels? Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Be me, 20 years old at the time. I was driving from Washington to Idaho. I get stuck in traffic at 11 o'clock at night. My BF and I decided to take a different way to avoid all of the traffic. The GPS told us to take this really dark road with no streetlights, no other cars. It was just complete nothingness. We proceed to drive the car up this horrible road. I start to get a really bad feeling in my gut. We take a slight bend, going about 50 miles per hour in total. A girl was just standing on the side of the road, staring. She was maybe 10 to 12 years old, from what I could estimate. We drive a little bit more down the road. There she is again. My BF and I just look at each other. What the fuck? This road is on a cliff. It just drops off 3 feet from the road. We take another bend. There she is again. My heart is racing now. She runs in front of the vehicle. I yell at my BF to just hit her. Fuck that noise. She vanishes when we do. At the end of the road, she is standing at the stop sign, just waiting. We get closer, and this awful grin just appears across her face. Nope. We decide to run the stop sign and continue on our trip. Never ever again will I take that creepy pitch black road that's on a cliff, ever again. When I was about 14 years old, a cute lesbian girl seduced me at a Halloween party. We went out to this empty guard shack on the edge of the abandoned warehouse lot that we were having the party in. We made out for a bit, but then she started getting really forceful and just biting me. I asked her to stop and pushed her away, but she attacked me and beat the shit out of me. After beating me, she started cutting and stabbing me with a knife. It was dark in the shack, so I never actually saw it, but I felt it in me and bled from it. I end up passing out from not being able to catch my breath, or bleeding, or the pain, whatever, I don't know. I woke up with people taking me to the hospital, feeling like I was cut to ribbons. The people at the hospital find no fresh cuts, and only a couple of older scars from a biking accident. They did find bruises and bite marks from her attacking me and the violent making out. I also had to get a blood transfusion, guessing I had lost about 30% of my blood volume. Police went to the place and were convinced I was murdered there from all of the blood. They tested it, and it was mine, and after a bit of head scratching, came up with the theory that I faked it by collecting blood over time for a prank or something, and that I overdid it and passed out from the lack of blood. Like, that made any sense. It was really scary at the time, and even more so to me now. There is some really unexplainable stuff out there, and it terrifies me that I can't even, group this in a paranormal area. I don't know anything like this happening. I wish I did so I could look it up and try to learn more about it. Be around 13 years old at the time that this happened to me. I am staying late at school because of orchestra practice. It's about 8 p.m, it's dark outside, and it's winter time. The school janitor has shut everything and turned off all of the lights in the rest of the school. A friend and I decide to go and explore the deserted building before going home. We find a rusty door that has always been locked, but now it is wide open. We go through it and go down some stairs. It's almost too dark to see. We start to smell weed smoke and blood and shuffling noises. We freak out and run away. A few weeks later, a homeless man was caught living in the school's boiler room. He came out at night and somehow caught rabbits and rats around the school, which he brought back to the boiler room and skinned and ate. He was also a convicted predator, too. Since September of last year, I noticed that on the bus ride to the train, a couple of people would walk in the same direction for several blocks to the train station. I would walk behind them, and this one girl would be 15 to 20 feet in front of me. If I got closer, she would do this jog, like if she knew I was getting closer, until a good distance was set. Another guy would walk 10 feet in front of me, and every time when we got to this grocery store, he would stop, turn around, and stare at me until I passed by him. This happened very often, enough to make me notice. They always wore the same clothes. The woman a beige coat with black stockings and a handbag. The man would wear a green military-inspired jacket. That same semester, when I would walk along the school's block, I would sometimes see this old Asian man walking in the same direction. When I got close to about 15 feet away, he would stop, turn around, and then stare at me until I passed by. Each of these interactions felt like I was being set up to feel like a stalker. It was very creepy, but I would just smirk to show that they are not getting to me. So, this happened to me about a month ago. I am very skeptical by nature, so it makes it all the more weird. Might be too spooky for some, but my reaction was way more like, what the fuck? So, I am walking back home from the light rail stop, which is probably about a mile or so away from my house. It was pretty late. I take night classes at the university downtown. Probably 11 p.m. or so, I want to say. The street that I live on sort of elbows when it crosses the street that I usually walk when I'm going to or from the light rail stop. So, I am about 20 or so yards away from the elbow, and I see this ye old-timey horse-drawn carriage turning the corner and headed off down my street in the direction away from my house. Now, I live in a pretty low-rent part of town, but my neighborhood ain't exactly rich, so seeing this kind of thing was pretty strange to say the least. I picked up the pace a bit and sort of power walked to the corner so I could get a better look. When I rounded the corner, there was nothing there. This confused the fuck out of me because after that elbow in the road, my street completely straightens out, and there is not another cross street for at least 100 yards, and I am absolutely certain it could not have disappeared out of sight in the time that it took me to round the corner. Now, the too spooky thing is, and what I didn't even notice at the time, was that I'm pretty sure the carriage and the horse had not made a single sound when it passed by me, and I could not hear it down the street either.